Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Devina from Arsyad Islamic School, Pekanbaru. And today, I'm going to tell you a folklore about the legend of Mount Tangkuban Perahu that is located in Lembang, West Java. So here's how the story goes. Once upon a time, there are a god and goddess which were detained for breaking the rules. They both were sentenced to live the rest of their life in the world. The god was turned into a dog named Tumang, and the goddess was turned into a swine named Wayonghyang. Tumang was owned by a king named Sumbing Prabangkara. One day, King Sumbing decided to go for a hunt to the nearest forest. Apparently, it's the forest where Wayonghyang lives. At the forest, the king needed to do his thing, and apparently, his pee was cupped in the coconut shell. Little did they know, Wayonghyang, who felt thirsty, found the water in the coconut shell and drank it, and then she became pregnant. Right after Wayonghyang gave birth, the king went back to the forest for another hunt, and he heard a baby crying, and he found a lovely baby girl. He took the baby home without knowing that it was his daughter, and he named her Dayang Sumbi. Long story short, Dayang Sumbi grew up to be a loveliest girl in the country. Lots of princes fought over her. Dayang Sumbi, who felt uncomfortable, chose to live in the middle of nowhere. She lives only with Tumang. She spends her life weaving clothes from the traditional loom that she has. One day, the loom was fallen to the ground, and she was too lazy to pick it up, so she just shouted out loud, "Anybody there? Bring me my tool. I will give you a special present. If you're a female, I will consider you as my sister. If you're a male, I will marry you." Suddenly, Tumang appeared and bring her the loom. As her promised, she married Tumang. As her husband, Tumang revealed himself to be a lovely god, only when the full moon comes. Several months later, they had a son, and they named him Sangkuriang. Sangkuriang grew up without knowing that the dog who stayed with them all along was his father. One day, Dayang Sumbi told Sangkuriang, her son, that she wanted a deer heart for dinner. Sangkuriang took Tumang to go with him. Suddenly, Sangkuriang saw a swine and told Tumang to go for it. Tumang remained silent since he knew it was Wayonghyang. Sangkuriang was upset, so he pointed his bow and arrow at Tumang. Accidentally, Tumang got shot and died. Sangkuriang then took Tumang's heart and went back home. Dayang Sumbi was so happy to have her son back, yet she was curious why didn't Tumang came along. She asked Sangkuriang where Tumang was. Sangkuriang remained silent and didn't tell her the truth. Dayang Sumbi, who had a good instinct, found out that it was Tumang's heart, and he hit Sangkuriang's head and casted him out. Time flew by. Sangkuriang has grown up to be a good-looking man. Meanwhile, Dayang Sumbi, who was a descendant of goddess, was given an eternal beauty and stays forever young. Sangkuriang, who wandered anywhere, one day reached his old house, yet he couldn't remember that it was his old residence. Dayang Sumbi didn't recognize him either. They both fell in love and planned to get married soon. But then, Dayang Sumbi saw a scar on Sangkuriang's head, and he remembered her old forgotten son. Dayang Sumbi then explained everything to Sangkuriang. Blinded by his love, Sangkuriang couldn't take the explanation and kept persisting on marrying Dayang Sumbi. Dayang Sumbi then thought of a way to defect the marriage. She then gave Sangkuriang a term that she thought he wouldn't be able to fulfill. In order to marry her, Sangkuriang would have to build a huge lake along with a boat in just one night. Sangkuriang then asked the genies and spirits to help him, and his work done in just a few hours before the dawn. Dayang Sumbi, who didn't expect that to happen, thought of an idea. She made a huge fire in the east to decoy Sangkuriang, so he thought that the dawn had coming. The genies that thought it was the dawn were afraid of the sunlight, so they ran away and left Sangkuriang alone. Sangkuriang was so mad. He kicked away the boat he made, and apparently it was laid down on its back. The boat then turned into a mountain called Tangkuban Perahu. Tangkuban Perahu literally means upside down boat. Yes, believe it or not, the mountain looks like an upside down boat. So that's it, my friends. That's the story about the legend of Mount Tangkuban Perahu. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I'm looking forward to meet you all again at another opportunity. Farewell. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.